Hello everybody. Welcome back to You Can't Win. This is episode 5. This week
Hello.
we're going to be talking about writing. And we're recording this 2 days after the launch of the podcast. We record these a little bit in advance. And I got to say, I'm really pleased with the launch. It's been really surprising and really nice to see everyone's support for the podcast and just to see the comments and the feedback that are coming in. People seem to be really enjoying it. And I know the first episodes are a little rough, and we try to tackle some big ideas and kind of lay some groundwork for where we're coming from with things. And I just want to say that I appreciate everyone kind of getting on board with this and seeing where the thing goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's been great to see, even in these early days, like a sort of core of people kind of jump on board pretty quickly and kind of offer moral support and all that kind of stuff. Especially, as you said, like we're just trying to figure this out as we go along, and people are kind of being charitable and working with us where we are. So that's cool. Yeah.
So some episodes it's going to be trying to tackle some big idea or something that we've been chewing on for a little bit, and other episodes it's going to be a little bit lighter and just sort of shooting the breeze about a certain topic or something, just kind of whatever we feel like on that given week. So we'll just see where the thing goes and see what people want to hear from us, and we'll just take it as it goes.
Sure. So I guess this week we were going to talk a bit about writing, and I guess related to that, like posting and kind of just online kind of and writing just in general. And one thing I was thinking about is we were talking about the internet on a different kind of episode, and I was thinking of like how I kind of got into writing more and kind of just started down that kind of path of like feeling like I wanted to post all the time and kind of joke around with people and stuff. And so I guess pretty early on, like with my friends and stuff, obviously like in high school, and we were kind of joking back and forth a lot. But I never thought of like writing as like a job or something that I could do more kind of for publication or stuff like that for a long time. And it's actually, I mean, this will kind of sound like a dark way of kind of putting it into it, but it is something that is kind of like increasingly kind of has kind of like a lining at the end of it or something where found that like at school and stuff I started to get anxious a lot, like in university, and I found it pretty hard to like I was still I would go out and interact with people and join clubs and all that kind of stuff, but I found it really hard to kind of express myself in those kind of situations and stuff. So I was a pretty early adopter of posting on forums and all that kind of stuff, posting online, and kind of combined with that too, I found that like I had a very, very low with the anxiety and kind of just that kind of stuff. I felt like I had a very low energy level all the time, and I just kind of had to. I really felt like I just had to sit around a lot. Like I just had to sort of, kind of just hang out a lot and kind of. So, anyways, that transformed itself into watching a lot of movies at first for a few years, just kind of just sitting there. And then eventually, I got into posting and stuff like that. So, hanging out on forums and chatting back and forth for a lot. And I don't know, people joke about that as being like training under high gravity or something, because I don't know, you're joking around with people that you wouldn't interact with usually in real life or something, kind of like all over the world and all over different kind of like ideas and stuff. And I don't know, that's been really exciting to be able to kind of connect with people that have viewpoints and stuff that you don't interact much with in real life. Anyways, do you want to add something or?
Yeah, I can relate to a lot of what you're saying, I guess. I mean, I think everyone feels that way in high school to some extent, like they don't sort of fit in because they're trying to kind of figure out who they are and all that kind of stuff. As far as getting into posting goes, I think for me, I don't know if I've explained this yet on the podcast, but I grew up like moving around the world in different places for my dad's job as the chief of police at the CIA.
Yeah.
So when we did that, we moved every like 3 or 4 years, and that sort of disrupts your friendships and stuff, obviously, because it's just like a new set of people that you meet every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So online relationships and friendships and whatnot, those were the more stable things that I could kind of like, if I moved, it didn't matter because I only knew these people through the internet anyways.
Yeah.
So I think there's something to that I did like about online stuff. And
Hmm.
also, I lived in countries like India and Thailand and Turkey, and these places, I mean, they're not Western countries, and I'm an American, so there's just a little bit of a culture difference there. I mean, it's not the I enjoyed living in those places, and I didn't have any kind of problems negotiating and navigating the local culture, but it's just nice to have something that is sort of familiar to you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the internet is um, technically American territory, I believe.
Oh, okay.
S-
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
thanks
Um,
Obama, but yeah.
yeah. No, I think when you and I started talking, we were kind of like in different places, kind of like you had been, I guess, in Washington for a bit, back and forth, and then um, you went overseas for a while when I was talking to you as well. And for me, it was more kind of like I was just I wasn't really doing much for years, just kind of hanging out and
Mastering
uh,
the blade and stuff.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was just one of those things where, so I just had fun making little jokes and being rude and stuff, and I never thought that would kind of evolve into something more. And it feels cool that it feels cool like it's starting to, and that's kind of neat. I don't know. That's kind of an interesting thing. And but I mean, even without all that, it's been great to be able to kind of meet all these people from like because I had almost the opposite experience from you, where I grew up in the suburbs of near Toronto, but we don't rarely went into the city. So it was just, mostly, um, uh, you know, majority white kind of, very, very, bland kind of region and stuff, and not really much going on. And,
Making me jealous, man. Sounds nice.
no, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing is that and in the first few years of university, I was conservative and thought I would just get a policy job or something like that. And it's completely different where things have gone from now. And it's strange because I mean, most of my life around that is still pretty much the same, like in terms of how I actually live it and stuff, and who I interact with on a daily basis in real life. And my family is not, they pretty much the same as they were in a lot of ways as back then. And then it feels different because I've kind of learned about and kind of experienced this whole new world out there of just becoming aware of like, international conflicts and comedy and all this other stuff. So, yeah, so that's been exciting. So,
Hmm.
um,
I'm thinking about posting and stuff, and like kind of the closest thing that closest other hobby of mine or whatever that or interest of mine that I think it matches with is actually like gaming and stuff
yeah.
like that. I actually relate to it more as something that I like to get good at.
Okay.
Like it's like in my head I'm like tracking points, and I think that sort of matches with maybe like the way people relate to comedy too. Like if you kind of are the sort of person that's like always joking and stuff, you're trying to you like to get those laughs, you like to make people laugh or whatever,
Yeah.
and you kind of feel like you're developing a skill in that way. And I
Sure.
think
Yeah.
posting it for me is pretty much that. Like it's just a way of telling jokes, and I feel like I can get better and better at doing it in this particular format that is like online joking and whatnot.
Yeah. I think about that though. I think that's interesting is that I think one of the things that happens online is that you experience a lot of the cliches pretty quickly,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
you kind of run through them, and you can, like, anytime a news event happens, by the end of the day all the jokes that are going to be made about it, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
then it very quickly becomes, or at least for some people, I guess it doesn't for most people, I don't even know, but for us at least, like you start to race to the joke that someone is not going to tell. You
Yeah.
start thinking about like things that you think or and we had talked about that before about how it is kind of silly at the same time that we're still doing, or at least I am kind of doing the same thing as other people. Is just my joke is one I try to make something that is making fun of the comments itself instead or something like that. But it is kind of weird because it is the same kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, it's just you do meet characters and stuff and all the different stories that does feel like life cranked up to 11, where it's like Goon Island and all that kind of stuff and all
Yeah.
the crazy stories. So yeah,
Yeah, you do meet really interesting people online, that's for sure.
yeah,
I am really excited about having some of those people on this podcast. I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
sure,
Um, you know, just people who have really unusual backstories or really unusual perspectives and that we've known through the years. I mean, we have a lot of mutual friends who sort of fit that description.
yeah,
And I think one thing that we want to do is have like group conversations with, you know, people with related interests or related backgrounds or something. So like
sure,
we might
yeah,
do episodes with uh, friends of ours that we've known a long time who've kind of been in these circles of online jokesters and whatnot. And I might do some episodes with some of my Muslim friends. Maybe we'll do some kind of more politics related episodes. I don't know, all kinds of ideas. And we would love to hear feedback about what kind of stuff like that you guys would like to hear. So just, give us a shout on Twitter or wherever. I guess that's the best way to contact us, huh?
yeah. Or the Curious Scout or the Patreon page. I guess somehow there's got to be some sort of magic way. Or email me too. I guess if you can get that off my webpage through my profile and stuff. So yeah, whatever. And yeah, I don't know. I think that's going to be exciting if we can get some of that together and kind of have fun, kind of that. And especially, I think once have people on that to tell some of their stories. And I don't know. And that's one of the things that you kind of I think has kind of taught me too pretty quickly, especially with someone from not that from like an upbringing where I didn't like the idea of going overseas somewhere far away was not really on my radar until my mid 20s or something. Like it wasn't even something I wanted to do. Really, I mean, so uh, but that's been one of the cool things is like you know uh, talking to people from these kind of backgrounds and stuff, but then also learning how that's one of the ways that comedy operates and kind of and people kind of joke around is through the discussions of those kind of things in kind of funny terms and kind of I don't know like aggressive jokes and stuff and um, I think that's I mean people joke about memeing themselves into believing things and it is true in
Mm.
some ways that you start to interact with people and you kind of make jokes back and forth about you know, Islam or Catholicism and stuff, and you start to learn through that or something. It's fun to kind of joke around, but then, as we had said before, we both kind of like kind of tackling an idea and kind of going back and forth with it and talking about it and kind of playing around with it and see where it takes us. And it has taken us strange places. I mean, really, if you
Yeah.
think about it, and it's kind of like I don't know, like religious kind of. I don't know what the statistics are, but it's a lot less likely, I would say, for someone our age to kind of like find things like religion or something like that and kind of get
Yeah.
interested in that level or something,
I
So
think they say like most religious conversions, or I mean, I don't know if I would call your experience a conversion. You didn't like
I know what you
change
mean.
religions,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
whatever you want to call that.
Reversion or something. I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah, awakening or whatever.
yeah.
That tends to occur, I think, in the early 20s is what
Oh,
most of the
really?
time that happens.
Okay,
And for me, I suppose it was early 20s. I've forgotten now exactly when it happened. It's been over 10 years.
okay. I didn't know it was that
So,
long. That's crazy. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like 2008, I think.
Okay, yeah,
So, yeah, that is early 20s, like in the
okay,
in the later part of the early 20s. So,
yeah. For me, I mean, more seriously, it's been the last few years. Really, it hasn't really. Before that, it wasn't at all. Really. So. Um, yeah. I mean, I joked about it for a while, but it's become less of a joke over time. So, yeah.
yeah. I mean, my relationship with religion has changed over that time as well.
Yeah.
Um, and it also waxes and wanes and stuff. That's one thing that I really am trying to work on a lot more as I get older, is not exactly figuring out what I want to do, but just being consistent with things.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something that is something a lot of people feel like in their 20s. I'm in my early 30s now, and I think that it's sort of time for me to be more consistent about something that I think is good or important, and just kind of commit to it and stick with that a little bit more, instead of feeling like I can kind of try this out, and then if I'm not feeling it, I don't have to keep doing it and bounce
Sure.
around. And I don't know. That
Yeah.
seems kind of more like a younger person's way of
Yeah.
thinking about
I,
things.
it is strange. I feel like in some way, the similar way, where it's like I feel like I'm on the other side of a lot of that too. Like where I've kind of, I don't know, like I feel much more likely that I'm going to believe similar things 5 years from now than I did 5 years ago or something, you know? Like,
Yeah, I feel the
so,
same.
um, yeah, and I don't know, but at the same time, I'm trying to keep open and kind of play around with things a little bit. But, um, I think part of it too is that, I don't know, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a weird comparison maybe for me to make, but like Steve Martin has like a book about his kind of like how he became a stand-up comic and stuff.
Hmm.
And how he started to learn how to write and all that kind of thing. And it's cool because it just a lot of it of the book kind of focuses on like his childhood and early jobs instead of kind of and he kind of says, I don't know the exact formula he does, but he says something like, I spent 12 years just learning how to do the basic thing, like not even
Like just
uh
like living life, just like how
like
to
like
live.
Well, like learning how to do basic comedy kind of stuff, learning how to
Oh, okay.
perform on the stage. Um, Not even good at it, just doing it, just like
Yeah.
being bad at it for most of his life, kind of thing, or not a lot. I mean, for a good chunk of his life. And this was stuff like doing shows at Disney, like the or like kind of like improv kind of stuff. He did like kind of a strange kind of like he was doing something a little bit different for that time, and just learning how to perform every night and and then he said that he had about a few years where he kind of like actually got things together into like an actual act, like he kind of realized what he was about and kind of where he wanted to take it. And then he said he had 2 years where he became super famous all of a sudden. And then he had about 2 years where he just kept doing it, but he felt it was stupid and he had already done it. And then he had a few years where he just left everything and went and did movies and did other stuff and just kind of took a break from it for a while and stuff and just did completely different things because he kind of felt like that was his. And it's funny because he's older now and he does a bunch of other things. Like he does music and stuff, but um, I thought it was kind of an interesting kind of like arc of like he said this was my stand-up comedy career, and if you look at on paper, he's like the vast majority of it was me not knowing what I was doing and just learning things, and then sudden fame kind of when he was a bit a little bit older, like for going from a very young performer all the way to actually hitting it huge on television and stuff, and then and doing like sold out concerts and things. um I don't know, I thought that was quite interesting because there is kind of a sense that a lot of times that you kind of have this idea that everything has to be at once or something. At least maybe when I was growing up, I really had this idea that people kind of grind at it and then kind of get better at things and kind of learn things. I thought it was more about talent and kind of like getting discovered or something.
Yeah, I
So
think,
I thought
well,
that,
that's a
yeah,
common conceit. I think that
yeah,
I don't know, it's part of like the whole entertainment business is trying to sell you the idea that these people are like magical geniuses and
yeah,
stuff. I think that sort of is more appealing on the consumer side than like
yeah,
this is someone who's been really bad for a long time, but they finally figured out their shit a little bit, and
yeah,
so I'll give them a shot. You know,
sure.
that career arc reminds me of Osama bin Laden. You know,
Okay, yeah,
he
yeah,
was really
yeah,
bad at it
yeah, yeah,
for a long time,
yeah.
and then he tried something, and USS Cole, and it wasn't that
Cool, yeah.
great, and then he was
Yeah,
like, you know what,
it was a minor hit. Yeah,
right, kind of a cult classic,
yeah,
and then he really hit it big, and then decided to kind of drop out of the game for a little bit.
yeah,
I don't think he did music. I think he,
sure.
I don't know what he was doing, but
Yeah, I don't know.
rest in peace. to
Yeah,
Osama bin
R.I.P. Yeah, in the sea. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and another funny thing I think that Steve Martin kind of actually brought up about that in the kind of the 12 years of learning or whatever, kind of like wilderness years or whatever. He said that he found it really easy to write jokes even from a young age, like for that kind of stuff, and like just writing and coming up with funny things to do or something. And he found it pretty easy to make people laugh. But he said the thing that he learned pretty quickly when he was actually doing and performing and stuff is that that has almost nothing. I mean, it has part of it. It's kind of like a prerequisite for the other stuff, but it has a very little to do with actual performing and stuff. Because he said you have to learn how to time things so that, like, say a waitress is dropping a glass, you have to speak in a certain way so that people don't pay attention to that as much as you performing, and
Wow,
or like all that kind of stuff. He said that
that's
like
really
this.
interesting.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Yeah, that idea that like he said it's pretty easy to write jokes. It's a lot harder to actually follow through and get it to the point where people have paid attention to you and are listening and are laughing and command of the stage and actually getting people to kind of notice. I think that's interesting. I don't know, like this idea that because there is this kind of bias in comedy where this is an old cliche, but it's true that like um, everyone kind of believes that they could do it at some level, or a lot of people do.
Oh yeah,
And
oh yeah.
and it's probably true to a certain degree. And he's kind of saying that like that's true, but it's different when you're actually trying to put it all out as kind of a package and kind of actually get people behind it and stuff. Like in a situation. But then it was kind of funny because that's why he really didn't like the performing. I mean, at a certain point he really hated the performing of like his live albums and stuff because people were laughing because it was him and had nothing to do with his skill as a performer. They were just laughing because he was
Yeah.
someone they had seen on TV and stuff and selling out like huge stadiums and stuff. But it's like he's like, is that really comedy? Like being in a stadium or something, So I don't know. I mean, it is kind of. He did say it's kind of silly to be. He probably shouldn't have been as depressed as he was because it's like still a huge star or whatever. But he's like, that was my life still. I was depressed or something. So
It's
I
got
don't
to
know.
be weird though, to be in that position. You're
Yeah.
like you don't. I kind of think of it like how when you're growing up, you're a kid. You sort of think like adults have this totally different inner life than you have. Like what it feels like to be an adult like must be so different because everyone seems so competent and everything.
Yeah.
Um, but then as you grow up, you never really get there, and you still feel like a kid, kind of.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of what it must be like. Like as a performer that gets really successful and famous, like I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe that is a different thing. I have no idea.
Yeah. Well,
But
no, I think that's true. I think that's probably the best case scenario, really. I think the worst case is that you start to believe that you are better than the other people and that you're some sort of demigod or something and that you can kind of
yeah,
rule everything and boss people around and stuff. And
that's how you end up in the basement of a pizza restaurant eating
exactly.
something that's not kosher.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's true though. I mean that's where all that stuff probably comes from is people thinking that they're kind of artistic geniuses or something that live beyond the rules of society and can do whatever they want because they're not bound by everyday requirements of being a normal person or something, and then they spin off into wild crimes and stuff because it's living life to the limit or whatever. I don't know. I think that's true. I really do think that that's part of the you
Yeah,
know
makes sense.
I don't know. But so we got to make sure that doesn't happen to us. I don't know. We'll make a pact here, not to perform ritual child abuse. That's going to be part of our.
Yeah, I can't promise anything, but I will try my very best.
Yeah, once we become superstars and take over Saturday Night Live from Lorne Michaels.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So we kind of drifted off of writing, but
I mean
maybe
I felt like that was sort of writing. I don't know, like we were talking about
we talked
Steve
about a
Martin.
book,
Yeah,
and that is a piece of writing. Yeah.
sure. Yeah, that counts. Okay.
Well, what I wanted to ask you actually, Donald, was you've sort of I think you made a little bit of a transition over time with your posting, and then you had a blog for a little bit, and now you started to do these articles and stuff. And I wanted to ask you what the difference is in those different formats, and like, do you feel like you have a different goal that you're trying to achieve in those different things, or are you always trying to basically kind of get at the same experience or the same tickle the same thing, or are they kind of, do you have different aims
Yeah.
when you're doing each?
Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess um, one of the things that is it's kind of again, it's one of those kind of things where it comes from kind of a dark place, but then I think it does go in a positive direction. Is that um, I kind of had like just silly thoughts all the time, and but I was kind of really embarrassed about it and kind of thought it was stupid and kind of whatever. And then after a certain point, I kind of started committing to myself. I was like, you just got to get it out of your head somehow and like talk to people about it and kind of
Mhm.
joke more and stuff. And especially because I was, just kind of um, living at the margins, as we kind of said, like not really involved in much other than, um, school part time or the hospital or whatever, that kind of just sort of like scary things. And then kind of, anyways, the idea that I started just trying to get it out on posting and kind of making jokes and stuff. And
So
um,
is it like was it more of an outlet, or was it more
yeah,
like this is my way to connect with broader society, or is it kind of both of those things?
oh, I think it was almost a way of being hostile towards society. Like I think it was more kind
Right.
of a way of getting things out, especially because I mean, when I started posting a lot, it was during the Iraq War and stuff, like early on, like 2004, 2005. And a lot of it was just like being totally shocked at what was going on around me and not understanding it. And even with my own internal life, like, feeling anxious and stuff and not understanding why. And then kind of from that going into um, really, it felt almost like punching or something, like just constantly hitting at people online, trying to get out jokes, trying to put into words absurd, kind of crazy ideas,
Yeah.
and kind of like get it out there. And it was venting a lot of the time. And it was, I thought it was funny, but it also, it probably did cross the line a bunch of times and kind of went strange places that I probably regret now and sometimes. But most of the time, I don't know, it's fine. But anyways, just to
That's
kind
very, I
of,
mean,
yeah,
I think that's
yeah,
very similar to my thing. I think I
yeah.
was doing the same thing. I don't think I ever crossed a line, never.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, it's the same kind of like a hostile sort of uh, I don't know, not an attack, but just when you're. And at the time, I felt like I was turning something negative into something positive. So,
Sure.
and I still think that's true, but it wasn't perhaps still on like balance something positive.
Yeah.
Like there's probably still more negative there than positive, but it's still just a bunch of stupid posts. So I don't know how
Sure.
much damage that's ever done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and related to that too, kind of like because of like anxiety and stuff. I mean, I just feel it like all the time, just going through my day and stuff. I just feel like I feel like almost like I might be slipping into a panic attack or something like that a lot of the day. Kind of just feel like that, and it's like so. Anyways, the point being is that when I was um, tweeting a lot in the last few years or stuff, I almost I'm usually just laying down or on in transit or something like that. Just kind of going about my day, and then I feel it's kind of a funny kind of process where when I think of something, I automatically kind of go, okay, I've got to get it out now. Don't just sit on it.
Hmm.
Put it out now so that you stop ruminating about it or whatever and stop whatever. And then it's funny because when I'm writing something, even if it's like a short sentence or something like that, I almost like hold my breath and kind of I feel like tension, kind of like everything kind of pulls together for a second, and I'm kind of like it's almost like I'm in suspension or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I'm just kind of sitting there holding my breath, and then I kind of tweet or whatever, and then I kind of let it go, and I'm kind of like okay, and it is kind of like a almost like a relaxation thing where I'm just like I might have a stupid idea about something, and I can just kind of think it through, put it out there, and then it kind of flushes it out of my system almost, So.
Man, it's like
Yeah.
yoga.
Yeah, I don't know, but the thing is though, like if I didn't have that kind of impulse behind it, like where I'm kind of managing my anxiety by writing and stuff, um, I probably wouldn't. I mean, I probably would not have gotten to that point where I did it a lot. I probably would not have. I really do think that I probably, like, if I didn't have the anxiety at that level that I do, I feel like I probably would have just continued on getting like a policy job, or even in the last few years, like maybe kind of continuing on and doing academic stuff. Like after my master's, maybe I would have applied for a PhD or something. And I feel like that's the kind of thing that I might have done if I was healthier in that respect. But it's just it's kind of funny because it's like a way I can manage my anxiety and have fun at the same time, and it's kind of had these side effects. I mean, I didn't think at the time I'm going to meet a bunch of people through this, or I'm going to, if anything, I mean, for the first few years and stuff, it was quite isolating, where I only talked to a few people online here and there, and and then eventually it kind of, I mean, really what it was is just um, I sort of turned Twitter into my main outlet instead of the forums.
Hmm.
And then after a few years, that kind of just it is kind of one of those things where it agglomerates. Like you kind of if you keep at it, random people kind of follow you every few days or something, and you kind of it is like capital or something. You kind of quickly it's like it just kind of shoots up after a year or so, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that's kind of been interesting. But yeah, but I mean, and
That,
then from that, as I've gotten opportunities from that that I've been able to kind of explore from there. So yeah,
yeah, that whole capital thing that you're talking about with Twitter really kind of plugs into the like game side of my
sure,
interest in these things where I don't know if that's related to like some kind of dopamine hit or something,
yeah,
but um, yeah, you know, you just sort of feel like you're somehow building something when it doesn't. I don't know.
sure.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
and yeah. The thing with that though is that for me it's kind of funny because, and I think that this actually might help in Twitter in some ways, and maybe hurts you in most other areas of the kind of the game or whatever. But like, is that I feel like I don't care if like random people think something is funny or not. You know what I mean? Like I really don't like if it's just like if I get a tweet that has like I don't know like 1,000 likes or something like that, the last 900 don't matter to me. It's you know what I mean? Like that's why I
Yeah.
delete a lot of them and stuff. It's the thing that I really enjoy is when someone that I know that I know is really funny says, you know, oh that was funny, or you know,
Right.
or if someone I don't interact with much that I know is kind of like at the top of their game at something else or something. You know, like if someone's like a professor of something that I'm interested in, and then they kind of comment on a joke saying it's funny, it's like that's cool because I feel like they're competent at something. Therefore, somehow that kind of transfers to me as like, you know, it makes
Yeah.
me
I
feel,
mean, you
yeah,
respect them, so you
yeah,
respect their
yeah,
opinion.
sure. So that's I think that's part of it. You know, I think that's but it is kind of it's kind of funny because that's I think that that kind of attitude of like caring a lot about what small number of people think and then kind of feeling like sort of good feelings towards the rest of people, but not really keeping track of what they say. I think I think it's healthy for the kind of jokes that I like telling.
Hmm.
It's probably not a good way to monetize, or usually, like you know what I mean, or like or to like transfer it over into other areas of life or something, you know, because um, yeah, but I'm not like saying I'm that I have that personality or those interests or something, but I can kind of tell people I don't know. Like, I mean, that's the thing is that until the last year, I didn't make any money from posting at all. You know,
Hmm.
um, I did it for many years at like a loss because I was, you know, I didn't even think of that as like as something that I was actually doing writing or something. I didn't think of that. Um, so yeah, so I mean, yeah, so I think that that's something that's been interesting too, is to kind of I don't know. I don't know if you grew up thinking of stuff like that. Like, did you think you'd ever do like a podcast or something like that, or anything like you know more formal kind of?
When I was before I started posting, I did have the idea of becoming a writer and even becoming a comedian. I think in the third grade, they were asking us what we wanted to do for a living, and that was my response was
Oh,
that I wanted
really?
to be a comedian.
That's cool.
I
Yeah.
don't know where I got the idea from. I don't know if I was like I can't think of comedy that I was listening to in the third grade.
Yeah.
Like what would a third grader even be? I don't know where this idea came to me, but um,
Yeah.
yeah. And then once I got into posting, that just like I don't know. It's the same thing as like computer games. Like I said, like that's not something I think of as like a way to make money. Although I guess some people do that nowadays. But
Yeah.
when we started doing this, this wasn't even socially like acceptable. Like you were embarrassed to talk about it in
Yeah.
public and stuff. Like now it's like normal, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, no,
Um,
no. I mean, like even stuff like what became memes and things like that. Like that was
yeah.
just total. It was like a marginal kind of nerd thing
Hmm.
for years and years. I mean, it wasn't like, it wasn't as if people on Facebook, 15 or like whatever, whatever website 15 years ago were sharing the same kind of stuff that they're doing now with like inside jokes and all that kind of stuff in the same ways. A lot of it was just like text of people being like, went to the mall or something like that, like not, it was totally different than it is now. Yeah. So, hmm
Yeah. And I don't really have any of those same um, aspirations anymore to be like a writer or a comedian or
yeah.
anything. With the comedy stuff, I think I realized I'm funny, like in a way that satisfies me,
Yeah.
and then I lost all drive to do anything beyond that. I'm like, oh, I'm funny, I'm fine with that, and then that's it.
Yeah.
The
No,
whole
yeah.
idea of going out, this is what really turns me off on the idea of like doing stand up or something like that, is
Sure.
telling the same jokes
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
night after night after night.
Yeah.
I like to make a joke once and that's it, unless it's like some kind of running joke.
Okay.
Obviously that's
Yeah. Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
But I don't like repeating jokes to people. That
Yeah.
just they're for me really more than anything. Like I make jokes for me. Sometimes they don't make sense to anybody else,
Yeah.
and then I'm pleased with that.
Sure.
And I think writing is sort of the same thing, but when I was like 16 and stuff, I was trying to read like all the heavy duty literary canon and
Yeah.
stuff. Like I read Gravity's Rainbow like twice before I got
Yeah. Yeah.
turned 18 and all this kind of stuff.
Sure.
And my idea was like that I really like got really serious into writing, really wanted to write like really high level stuff. And I think that set my standards impossibly high.
Okay.
Now
Yeah.
I dislike almost all fiction because it just doesn't reach the level of what I kind of expect from writing, which is just like insanely high.
Yeah.
And so the same thing is like I feel the same way about my own writing now. Like I'm just like I don't have anything to say because I'm not literally writing the great American novel or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah.
You
No,
know?
no, no. I understand that. I kind of I mean, I had almost the opposite in some ways from a childhood on. Is that I guess just from my family and people that I knew and stuff. Um, like growing up in school, most people that I knew, I'd say about half maybe, were pretty set on becoming professionals. Like they were going to become a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. And it usually was like the terminal case of that profession or something. Like it wasn't like most people I know wouldn't be like, oh, I'm going to be a nurse or something like that. Do you know what I mean? It would be more kind of like, what is like the most education I could get for that or
Mhm.
something.
Sure. Yeah.
So, so I think that I got this kind of sense from people that it was okay to be funny, but the idea of like converting that into something where you didn't have to do a normal job just seemed crazy. Like it didn't seem like it seemed like if you see someone doing that on TV, it was just like a scam or something. Not like in a negative way, but like they were getting away with something. Like they were not doing
Right.
what they should be doing.
Yeah.
They should be out there. And I think that was reinforced a lot from like the kind of characters that you actually see in stand-up comedy from especially like knowing famous ones, like Bill Hicks or Lenny Bruce. So once I started learning about the older kind of comedy stuff, all of those personalities kind of reinforce that image, right? Like all of them, a lot of those people at least. Most comedians are not like that. They're actually more kind of like, they show up and do like writing for a show or something like that. Do you know what I mean? It's like a lot more of like a real job than I would even want. But like,
Mhm.
um, it is kind of, yeah, it's a strange kind of thing where I thought my whole life that it was just, so even when I was trying to like get a bit better and kind of like figure out things to do, it would never have been like I'm going to start writing more or something like that. That wasn't. I mean, I said that sometimes, but for a lot of the time, it was not like that was not a sustainable way of living. That wasn't like something I could do other than just kind of a funny little thing to do. And it's actually really hard to kind of try to strip that away a bit and like say, I don't know, maybe you've kind of developed a bit of a skill here. You don't have to think you're the best person in the world at everything. You can just say I'm pretty good at this and try to figure out a way to convert that into a little bit of money or something, and just kind of see how it goes. And it's better than where I was doing before. It's not like, I was up to a lot before. So it's like, just see where it goes. Like
Yeah.
it's not like, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be whatever. But that's really hard to kind of, I mean, that's people, it's hard to kind of unlearn things that you learned early on and kind of like teach yourself with new lessons like that, kind of where you can say, you know what, it might even feel bad for a bit to kind of do something like that and not try to do a more typical job, but you might feel better in the long run or something. Like you might feel a little bit ashamed or something like that. You're like, well, I'm not out there doing this or that. I don't know. It's funny because I go through like cycles where I'm like, I start getting obsessed with like learning about finance and getting a finance job or something like that, or because I have an economics degree, and it's like, well, I might as well do something like that, and then just kind of part time, and then kind of write or something like that inside. And it's like, yeah, but why don't you just write? Why don't you just do what you want to do
Yeah, if you can,
alongside that?
right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's hard, but I mean, it's not really a big money maker. But if I felt a bit more confident and I felt more it was like a job, I'd be out there pitching more articles and doing more. And if I start doing that, I think it would be really healthy. I think, to start thinking in those terms instead of. I think the other thing too is that I thought it was like a snob thing. Like I thought that like
Hmm.
people that wrote novels or something like that or did whatever was kind of like it was for people that had a lot of money anyways, and they were just looking for something. It's like painting, and
Well, I
movies or
mean,
something. Yeah,
yeah, there's truth to that. What you're saying
yeah,
about comedians, what you're saying about writers, there's a little bit of like where they just like to hear themselves talk, that kind of thing.
yeah,
I mean, that's not the whole of it, but there's something there.
sure, yeah. And yeah, I don't know. It seems it's shameful in some ways for that. I don't know. But I don't know. I mean, it's sure beats a lot of other things I could be doing, in terms of being negative in the world or something. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think one thing with podcasting that I'm enjoying is that I don't really have any kind of preconceived ideas about how it relates to work or anything like that. Like
yeah,
I listen to a lot of podcasts because I have a fairly long commute during the day, and
hmm
there's a lot that I really enjoy, but they're mostly stand-up comedians, so they're
yeah,
kind of promoting their persona and their their shows and all that kind of stuff.
sure,
Um, but it just seems fun, and it just seems like something I could do,
yeah,
and I just kind of wanted to see what it's like to do it. Just to
yeah,
it's fun to do. It's yeah, it just seems cool to do it. So I don't
yeah,
have any ideas about like what kind of a end result it should be, or what kind of
yeah,
product I should be doing, or
yeah.
what I should be talking about. Um,
I
although
thought,
with the
yeah. I'm
with
sorry.
these first few episodes, I do feel like I've had a little bit of an idea that like we've kind of like we said at the beginning of this that we've been trying to tackle some big ideas here at the outset, and I think that's not so much part of our intention as it is just like we have these like I don't know, we have this platform that we're making for ourselves, so it kind of I don't know, at least from my end, I sort of feel like I should be saying something kind of big because a lot of people are going to be listening to it, hopefully. So, but that's not necessarily the case. I mean, I
Yeah,
listen to people talk about all kinds of stupid stuff, and that's perfectly
yeah,
entertaining. So,
sure.
it's
Yeah, I
whatever.
think I don't know. I think we have. I mean, you said that you didn't really think about the kind of end game and things like that, and I think that's true. And I'm just to me, it's all gravy. Like if people listen to it,
Yeah.
some people do. I think that's great, and just we'll see how it goes. But I do think that we were trying to avoid some things. Like we were trying to avoid, um, at the start at least, kind of um, like I listen to a lot of different like punchy kind of news oriented or like kind of theme oriented podcasts. That's kind of more what I listen to. Some of it's stand ups, but it's mostly people that kind of, it's like Chapo or something like that, where it's kind of people that have gotten into it as podcasters kind of thing. from the start,
Hmm.
or people or like Come Town or something like that, where it's kind of just vulgar jokes and stuff, but it's still funny and but I I felt like we were doing like that was already being done, like those like the kind of punchy kind of where you get like a news topic of someone saying something kind of silly or a dumb idea or something, and you kind of knock at it for a while about what's a negative thing about this or something, or kind of silly thing, and then you kind of it's very very staccato, like really quick takes and stuff. um I don't know, I felt like you and I wanted to do something a bit more kind of you know having a lot more kind of longer conversations, or just kind of talking through things and stuff instead of chasing the news all the time or something like that. Just because
Yeah.
that's where we come from. That's what kind of our thinking on it is, or something like that. And then I think that once it evolves into something where it probably will end up more in that kind of traditional kind of thing where we're talking more about things that are going on and stuff a bit more, and with people, because especially when we have guests and stuff, they're going to want to talk about things that are relevant to them.
Hmm.
And uh, but I think that's fine. I don't know. I just mean that, like, there's kind of a basic shape to things that I think we want to do, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But yeah. So I don't know. I think that's fine. I don't know. We don't have to maul everything. Anyway, the point being with that is that I think both of you and I know that um, there's certain ways of doing it where we could have focused on the launch or something, like a bit more. Like we could have probably done a lot more to either promote it or um, package it in a very, very sophisticated way or something, or kind of thing. And that's not really where we're coming from. We're more kind of like, well, we'll just talk and see where it goes and have some fun and stuff. And yeah, so
Yeah, we're just doing what we want to do and kind of build it as it goes. And I think, yeah, like we could have really, really set a lot of foundation and kind of, you know, I mean, the first episodes are literally the first whack at it that we did.
yeah,
We didn't do any kind of rehearsal or anything. So this is like really raw. And I think that's sort of what we want. Like we just kind of want things to organically build, and we want to get people like people around us to kind of be to participate in that as much as possible. We don't want to have this like prepackaged idea that we're selling. It's more just like let's kind of make something together. And I kind of am I'm really into the idea of kind of having some sort of community kind of develop on the back of this,
yeah.
because
I think that'll be fun.
that seems the most like I don't know. That's just kind of what I think would be most fulfilling to get out of this. Like, I like talking to you, so that is fun in and of itself. But
Sure,
if we can kind of like, I don't know, help people out with different things, or if people can kind of relate to stuff and they get some edification out of that, or even if it just makes someone's like Monday morning go a little bit easier, like that seems like a really nice thing to do.
sure.
So
Yeah.
that sounds cool to me.
Do you have anything else you wanted to say about writing, or do you want me to start getting into some of these questions here or something? We're at, I guess, I think we're at about 50 minutes. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't know about
yeah.
you.
Let's get into the questions.
Sure. So I thought I would ask this one first because it kind of gets into some of the stuff that you were reading before, and someone noted to me that your book, I'm sorry, one of your favorite books is Gaddis's The Recognitions,
That's
and
right. Yeah, that's
and
actually probably the favorite book of mine, The Recognitions by William Gaddis.
so the guy says, ask Tom about his thoughts about the book and its relationship with, in connection with, I don't know how to say this, aniconism. Oh, aniconism. I guess maybe they mean iconoclasm or something in the Islamic tradition.
And maybe he's talking about like not depicting
I think that, yeah, not
things,
depicting.
like
Yeah,
not depicting living things, or especially not depicting God in any kind of way
sure.
in
Yeah,
art and stuff like that.
yeah.
I would have to think about that. I really don't have any preformed ideas about
Okay,
that aspect of things, but
sure.
that's an interesting question.
Yeah,
But in terms of that book, I haven't read that in over a decade, so
okay.
it's been a while. But
Yeah,
what I like about that book is that um, I really like postmodern American literature, like that, latter half of the 20th century, Infinite Jest, Gravity's Rainbow style stuff.
Hmm.
For the most part, some of it gets put under that label that I think is really bad, but the kind of high level works in that genre are really great. And I think the Recognitions is sort of like a bridge between modernist literature and postmodernist literature, and I think it does what both of those categories of literature try to do, and better because of its kind of hybrid nature. I think that it takes the whole modernist idea of like trying to create like a capital G great work, and does that, and it talks about a lot of like it sort of tries to get at like what's the most important thing you could say in a book, and I think it kind of has a take on that is successful. And
Okay.
then I think the whole postmodern thing of having like a sort of multiplicity of voices and sort of like decentering that whole project of, you can't say the big thing, so instead you'll just say a lot of everything, and that sort of adds up to the big thing.
Yeah.
I think that it does that. Yeah, that's exactly what it does, in fact. So, um, yeah, in a way, I sort of see. I don't think there's been a book better than it that's been written, and I think I view pretty much all writing that's come since it in its shadow. Like it's
Yeah.
just sort
Wow.
of like
Yeah.
it's a big thing in my mind. Like it
Yeah.
has a big place.
Yeah. It's funny. I haven't written. I mean, I haven't read much fiction at all. Like I haven't. I've read like a few books here and there, but I really. It's funny because I mean, one of the only authors that I've read like more than one novel from is Welbeck and stuff like that. Like it's like what I
Mhm.
mean. Like that's the kind of thing that's in my brain. So.
Yeah, and that's kind of like that's pretty unusual, right?
Yeah. So. Um.
Yeah, it's a big book. It's big and dense. It's over 1,000 pages,
Sure.
and it's not easy reading.
Yeah.
So you got to commit like a year to
Sure.
to do it at least. But it's really good. There's a lot to get out of it. I think it's worth a try for people who are into that kind of stuff.
Cool. So I'll move on to the next question. It's from our friend Leo.
Oh, hey,
Um,
cool.
yeah, and maybe we'll have him on the
Hopefully a
pod.
future
Yeah,
guest. Yeah.
yeah. So, do you think the female-only reboot of James Bond, called Jane Bong, and starring Anna Faris, the wife of well-known male actor Channing Tatum, will
Uh-huh.
bust box office records?
Is this a real thing?
Oh yeah, that's the question. So, no, it's not a real thing. No, there's no movie called Jane Bong, but I mean, we could make it one. It sounds like something that we should invest our time into, but
Yeah, that
um,
sounds like a great idea.
yeah, I don't,
Um,
probably
well,
shouldn't have brought up Channing Tatum there because that's really, you know, I care about Anna Faris on her own terms. I don't need to always make her the wife of someone. I don't know. That's my take on that. Yeah, Jane Bong. We'll have to workshop that name a bit. That's really there's some problems there. There's
I
like
think a good go. It would be big in China. That's a really big
yeah,
movie
yeah,
market these days. I think they would go for that.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if Bong is an actual Chinese name, but um, I don't know. And also Anna Faris, that might be a whole Scarlett Johansson thing where people start complaining that she's not actually Asian and stuff. That might be I don't know. That's a whole can of worms we don't want to get into, I guess. But yeah, all female reboot of James Bond. I mean, they've tried to do that a bit. There's a few of those, but never really took off. Like I guess there was like Salt or something like that with Angelina Jolie.
Oh yeah, I remember that with
Yeah,
Brad
stuff
Pitt and
like that.
Angelina Jolie, right?
Yeah, yeah, and they really promoted that hard. I don't think it went anywhere. I don't remember, but yeah. So another question is I combine these. There is college worth it? And do you think that going to college at 23 is too late? Now that's kind of funny for both of us because both of us went to, we took courses pretty late. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I went back to college at 23, or
Yeah.
did I finish college? Yeah, something like that. No, I finished college at 25. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
And
I took some years off.
I just finished my master's at 37, so that's pretty late in the game too. So yeah, is college worth it? I guess is that you know.
I did get a lot of out of college. So my thing with college was I went right out of the gate when I was 18. That was after living the first 18 years of my life overseas. I got accepted into a school in the States and went there and dropped out after 3 quarters with a 1.3 GPA.
Yeah.
I was not in a good place to be doing that kind of thing. I was just not focused on school at all, and I know most students aren't, but I was really not focused on school.
Yeah.
I was selling weed out of my dorm building and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So, uh, going back to it later, I took about 3 years off or something, and I went back to community college, and then transferred into a different school, which was even better. It was actually a school I got rejected to the first time.
Yeah.
And I think that was really great once I had some idea of what I was trying to get out of college. So that's what I usually try to advise younger people on who are like thinking about college and stuff is not to go if you don't have an idea about what you're trying to get out of it.
Yeah. I think
Some
that
people,
yeah.
sorry, some people, they know that they're trying to get like an engineering degree or that they're trying to do pre-med or something like that. And sure, if that's what you're trying to do and you don't think that's going to change, go for it. But if you have some hesitation about that, if you're not really sure that that's what you want to do, not only for the next 4 years of your life, but for the rest of your life, then give it some time and think about it. There's no rush. Like you could spend several years trying to figure things out, and it's not really going to hurt you.
Sure.
And it could save you a lot of debt. I mean, when I went back to college the second time, going through community college saved me a bunch of money,
Yeah.
and I was able to get grant money that I wouldn't otherwise have had access to. And then because I went through community college and I was older, the material was a lot easier. I got better grades, and so I was able to get a transfer into a better school with more grant and scholarship money. So it saved me a huge amount of money in the end, and I ended up getting a lot out of it because I was self-motivated and I wasn't just like dragging my heels going to class.
Sure. No, I think that's a good point. I mean, when hearing me, when I hear 23 is too late, that's kind of, I'm like, oh man, that's kind of, like it's not, yeah, I don't know. That's pretty, you're still pretty young there. I think the problem is that you see people around you kind of jumping over these hurdles, in life, kind of like, they're getting a job and then maybe a house and stuff like that. But I think number one, that's becoming more rare now. I need anyways. Like you see a lot of people that get tripped up in one way or another, or doing something different, and aren't hitting those kind of sort of imaginary targets as quick as they were going to. And that's not a big deal. Like it really isn't. Once you start getting down the line, you start to go. It's hard though because it is, if someone else believes something, it still affects you even if you don't. You don't try to internalize it or something. It's still there. It's still out there, and you might be annoyed by it, but it still kind of affects you in some way. And but no, I would say that in terms of getting something out of it, it's kind of different because I've always really enjoyed the actual like lectures and stuff and going to school. It's being more the experience of it. Like I hate writing papers for school or something. It's just the worst thing to me in the world is having to sit down there and just write out the whole arbitrary thing for like it never made sense to me. The whole, I know why now. I get it now. It took me this long to get it. But the idea of just doing an assignment for the sake of jumping through a hoop just didn't make any sense to me at all the whole way through. And I get now that it's like it really is a learning process, but I didn't get that at the time. I didn't kind of put it together. So, anyways, I think that's part of it. In terms of too late, I mean, I kind of lucked out too. I wouldn't even say about too late, but I mean, both of us have kind of gone through the same thing where we we were in a position where any sort of like guidance counselor or objective person would have said you're probably not going to get your degree at this point or something. You know what I mean? Like you said like a 1 point something whatever GPA, or
Yeah.
I had like a my first degree. I mean, I had some high marks in some of them, but I think my GPA for the whole thing was like a B minus or C plus or something, which is it's not terrible. I mean, it's okay, but it's not going to get you into grad school. That's for sure. Like
Hmm.
and I took a few upgrading classes, and I ended up, lucking out. I did get into a master's with full funding and all that, and was able to do it with actually less debt at the end of the process than I started with. So that's kind of like a fantastic thing for me to be able to do. Um, and no one would have told me that 10 years ago or something. If they looked at my transcript and knew about my health and stuff, they wouldn't have said that. They wouldn't have said you're likely to go back and get a master's and get it paid for and stuff. So I don't know. I feel like it's one of those things where try not to project too far in the future your trends, either
Yeah.
positive or negative. Don't like I don't know invest that much
That's good general
into that.
advice
Yeah, yeah. I
with a
mean
lot of
that's
things.
yeah. Even when things are going well, you got to be careful about that. That's when you kind of you forget that bad things happen, and then that kind of gets you into a whole other problem. But um, kind of a generic question, but just I don't know. I thought kind of shows worldview or something. Is someone said nature is beautiful? Yes or no?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think so.
Where else do we get the idea of beauty from? Like, you know, like what else is it based on if not nature? I mean, just looking at it from like a rational level,
Yeah.
like
Well,
I
I
don't.
mean, so in Islam, is the world a beautiful thing? Is that it's a reflection of creation, or is it because I guess there's some people that think of it as like a fallen, terrible place, and you don't want to be worldly or something like that. But
Yeah,
it's kind of a I don't know. Do you think that's a contradiction, or do you think that's just the two sides of it? Like it's kind of
I
it's
think,
yeah
yeah, I think it's the two sides. There's definitely stuff about seeing the the hand of God's kind of, you know, creation or whatever in the world, seeing like viewing creation or viewing the world as a way of understanding God. Like you understand mercy, you understand justice, you understand beauty because you can see that in the world, and so then that gives you an idea about what ultimate, like true beauty, true justice would be like. That
yeah.
it's not just this, you know, that particular instance is not the doesn't capture the full
So almost like a
substance of
Platonist
it.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of Platonism in Islamic thought,
Okay.
and but there's also a lot of stuff about how the world means nothing to God. Like he made it, it's nothing to him. Like he doesn't have any, investment in it whatsoever. He made it for a short time, and then he'll get rid of it, and then we'll move on to the next stage of things. And that there's a hadith that even said like the prophet picks up a bone or something like that. I forget exactly what it is, and it's like a rotting, stinking bone. There's like flies on it or something, and he kind of says like, "This is what the world is." This
Yeah,
in God's eyes, this is what the world is,
that's
and
funny. Yeah.
uh, yeah, there's all kinds of things like that. So it's both sides, and the main thing is that you don't become too invested in the world for itself because you're supposed to understand that it's temporary, and even if the world is going to outlive you, you are not going to be here forever. So you should have other things in mind, or else you're going to kind of be left empty-handed.
Yeah. So we're over an hour now, I guess, kind of thing. And so I thought I was going to ask maybe like a last question. Do you like Beyonce?
Me?
That was one of the questions. So I
She
thought
seems
I
like
would
a
really
dick.
yeah.
Just
Um,
fucking asshole. No, I don't. I
wow.
don't like her. I get a bad impression from her. She
Yeah.
she. I heard some story about her, and I don't know if this is true, but I'm just gonna say it because fuck it, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, that she took one of the old Destiny's Child members to like a fast food restaurant or something, and was like, it was supposed to be like, oh, we haven't hung out for a while, I haven't seen you in a while, let's go out to eat over here, and they do that, and then she was like, if it wasn't for me, you'd be working here,
Wow.
and I don't know. She just seems
Yeah.
like a crazy psycho.
Yeah. Well, I mean, early on, I always thought it was kind of funny um, that she was like a big Pepsi spokesperson and stuff. I don't know. I always found that funny that like she's kind of, especially now, she's kind of reinventing herself a bit as kind of more like an artistic, um, sort of like brilliant video artist kind of thing, you know. And I think
Yeah.
that's probably better than, I don't know, whatever. It's her life to do that, but I do think it's funny that she's just I don't know. I just find that funny that just this idea of making probably millions off Pepsi and then people kind of investing that as her being like this giant figure of rebellion and kind of protest and
Yeah.
it seems I don't know. It's not even like they're kind of like, well, she did that and she apologized or she kind of said, well, that was kind of silly, but whatever. It's more kind of like it's because they kind of insist that they go together. You know what I mean? It's kind of like this idea
Right.
that you can't criticize one because it's kind of like making your way in the world, hustling to get that dollar and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know. It's
Yeah.
weird.
Shut up.
That's
Hustling
the
to make
yeah
that dollar. How about
yeah
making millions and millions? Whatever.
yeah
I think it's funny how Pepsi sort of has this like marketing identity of like kind of being for like all these protest movements and stuff
yeah
because they're Pepsi and not Coke, so they're like
yeah.
the underdog. Like,
That's funny.
fuck off,
Yeah,
fucking
that's
Pepsi.
that is something. Yeah, a PR person got paid millions of dollars for that. That's a good idea too. That's funny.
Yeah,
Yeah, that like this idea that
ridiculous.
they're the resistance. But no, I don't know. Yeah, and it's funny because that's something I haven't even processed yet. Maybe that's something we can talk about in the future one day. Is this idea of selling out and stuff? And there's this kind of story I read once about like the um, of a journalist that went to like an art school and was giving a talk and asked the art school people like what they thought about selling out and kind of doing stuff for corporate money and all that kind of stuff. Kind of like that kind of doing their art for that instead of kind of for whatever they wanted to do or whatever. Sorry, and then uh, and the journalist said that they had no concept of what he was talking about. That it was just completely like, well, no, you have to get a job in PR or marketing online and stuff like that. Like, that's just where you get a job if you're doing art. Like, that's how you do it.
Hmm.
And I thought that was like so alien to what I've kind of thought of and stuff that. But then I was like, yeah, but I haven't really criticized that. I haven't thought about that. I haven't thought about why most people do anything, and thought maybe that's something in the future we can kind of think through. So, anyways,
Sure.
those are the
Yeah.
questions that I kind of picked now. A lot of them are kind of like, does Tom like gay sex and stuff like that? And I didn't really know if you wanted to get into that kind of stuff yet. But so most
Yeah.
of the questions are not that
I don't want to get
specific
into
yet.
that.
Sure. Yep. And so anyway, so how about we leave it for there for today, and we'll work on something else soon. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Well, thanks for listening, people, and that was episode 5, I guess. And we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I never learned to spell, at least not well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I never learned to count a great amount. But my busy mind is burning to use what learning I've got. I won't waste any time. I'll strike while the iron is hot. If they asked me